Hello everyone, it's Tagiris here again with another episode. So last time we finished off the exterior of the inn here and we did all the decorations and whatnot. And at the end of the episode I said I would be continuing that kind of design for the rest of the island or plateau, I guess, here. So I've gone ahead and added a large tree here. And I've also tossed in some white glass panes to... phantoms are attacking me. Dude, you're embarrassing yourself. What are you doing? Get out of here. Okay. Anyway, distractions aside. So I've gone and copied that also into a couple of the trees here. And yeah, I've extended it also down around the front to the, or back, I guess, of the area to the storage warehouse that we built a couple episodes back. And I got a big one just kind of tucked in the corner here. Just to kind of round out the area and give it a bit of contrast of color. This far side I haven't finished off yet because I want to get these docks finished and laid in first before I go too far ahead in finalizing the rest of the kind of clutter. And the only docks I've built so far have been these two because this is where the first airship we're going to build is going to be. It's going to be a bit of a big boy. It's pretty much going to go all the way from there to here based on the kind of rough mock-up I've already built in Creative. But yeah, we're going to be copying that in here next, and I'll go straight into the building because it's going to be a bit of a doozy. And yeah, I'll kind of explain it as I go along. So for the ship, I decided to start at the keel and work my way up instead of normally how I would start at the deck and work my way down. Just because the limitations of survival and an airship made it a little difficult to do this in a more easy way. So the fortunate thing about doing ships is it's all just fractions to get that kind of teardrop and ellipse shapes for the various parts of the hull. So this ship I'm planning to be about 60 blocks long, so I'm looking at the back third of about 20 blocks to be solid where the keel is, and then tapering upwards towards the bow. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm starting, working my way up, and since I know it's going to be 60 blocks, I'm aiming for a width of about 15, which is a quarter, and then of that 15, I want about 10 in height to create an ellipse, because you want the height to be about double what the diameter would be. So once I have that bow kind of in a nice shape that I like, I'll find out where I'm 10 blocks above the keel and then start pulling the deck back to create the kind of center line of the ship. From there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling out every 3 blocks or so these kind of rib shapes to reinforce where the 15 block width is going to be. And again, once I finish that back third, I'm going to start tapering these kind of ribs like less and less out to create a teardrop shape. So from there, I'm going to start pulling the front of the bow back to create the shape. And I'm doing it in a way of creating lengths of blocks at a diagonal that are slowly getting smaller and smaller. So going from 4 to 3 to 2 to create kind of a gentle curve. Once I've hit the middle of the ship, I'll stretch it back fully and then kind of end a small taper on the back just to make it not a solid chunk. So now that I got the top of the deck done, I'm going to start working on pulling the keel up to the kind of center ribs that I was talking about before to create that ovate shape. So I'm just lining them up with the parts above, and I'm just creating a gentle taper again. So I'm going from a slab to a couple of stairs to make a diagonal, and then 2 blocks straight up to create just that gentle kind of curved shape rather than just going on a straight diagonal or something. Again, this is one of those ones where you got to put more attention into it just because it is an airship. If it was a water ship, you can hide a lot of these, so to speak, mistakes underneath the water. The other thing to note also just looking at this is that 3 block wide gap in the middle is actually going to be filled in, and where you'll see that solid block on the right there, that's where the main deck is going to be. Just to give you kind of a rough idea of what the height of the interior of the ship is going to be. Because of the shape of the ship, you're going to be losing a fair chunk of space just to the shape. But if you can plan out in advance to create an interior of a proper size, it won't be too bad. And since we are shooting for 10 block height, it's going to end up being about 6 blocks in height in total on the interior, which will give us a decent amount of storage space for this cargo ship. So now that I got the basic kind of ribs and skeleton of the ship done, I'm going to start filling in the gaps between the ribs with a different type of wood. This just helps add a bit of contrast without actually adding any more bulk to the ship. So I'm going for oak here, and I'm just keeping the exact same taper that I have on the spruce ribs and just pulling it straight across from part to part. This is a pretty straightforward process. There's not really much to say here. I've also added a bit of a trim at the top of spruce, because in those kind of top sections, I'm going to be adding some warped stem to create just a kind of a different color, because like ships are generally painted in the colors of their nation to just kind of show them as distinct, and I'm going to be copying that kind of idea with my normal cyan scheme, and warped planks work good for that. It'll also add us a little space that we can add some trapdoors in later to create almost portholes, because that's going to be right at the top of where the bottom deck is going to be. So we've jumped ahead in the progress here a fair bit, but I was just filling in some areas with the oak and adding that warp stem and warp trapdoor trim that I spoke about previously, so it wasn't really worth going over. So from here, we're going to start working on the part that diverges from a standard ship to an airship, because we're adding the supports for the main balloon structure. While you could probably extend these upwards to create a mast, that isn't quite what we're going to be doing in this video, so I won't be going over it. So for these supports, we're looking at 3 kind of center chunkier ones in the middle and 2 smaller ones on the side, just to add a bit of shape and create a more robust support for the balloon, because the balloon's going to be running the entire length of the ship. It's important to have one that big because you want the balloon to look like it could plausibly support the, or displace the weight of the ship, and it has to be about as big as the ship to do that. And because of that, we're going to be looking at a total diameter of the balloon to be about 13 blocks, because the ship is 15 blocks wide. Those extra 2 blocks are going to be external ribbing that we'll be adding later, because I want those wood ribs on the far end to be able to attach to the sides of the ship. So for this, we're just doing a simple circle. It's going to be a 5 wide space in the middle to center it on that kind of main rail I've built, and then we're just going to do 3 block diagonals from there. So it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to be taking that ship, and then I'll be extending it all the way down to the end of the rib there. So now the balloon's being fully extended for pretty much the entire length of the ship here. I'm going to start working on making end cones to kind of round out the shape to make it look more interesting. And we're going to be stealing the same kind of design that we did for the bow of the ship. So I've created these little tabs off of the center balloon, and we're going to be going ahead and just going in 2 block increments to create kind of a triangle shape. And then from those, we're going to start tapering them at 1 block diagonals upwards to create a very smooth cone shape. And while this cone shape will look a little rough originally, keep in mind we are going to be adding some dark ochre ribbing, which is going to be filling in the shape a bit and creating some visual interest. Okay, so now that we have the rough kind of cone shapes on either end, we're going to start pulling the banding up the ship. So I'm running one that runs the entire length of the ship around the center, kind of along where those posts are. And then I'm also running one up and around the circumference of the balloon where each post is, and then a center band that's going to be running across the middle. While this does sound like a lot, it does really help break up the very boring kind of wool shape of the balloon. There isn't really much going on, and you got to add what texture you can, and it also does help add realism because it looks like they're actually supporting and holding the balloon in place for the ship. And the other nice thing is that these supports will add us another area to attach to the hull of the ship because they're that same 15 block width. So once I get them kind of roughed out, I'm also going to be adding a point and a cone to the front of the ship just to kind of help make that look more aerodynamic, but also, again, it adds visual interest. I may at some point, if I build another one of these airships, add a proper figurehead to the front there, but that's going to be a much larger project. Once I've got all the ribbing blocked out, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add some fins to the back of the ship. I wasn't really happy at this point with how boring it was looking and simple, and I wanted to add something that kind of was almost Zeppelin-like. So what I've done is I've brought the dark oak banding downwards in that same 2 block slope that I've been consistently using, and I'm just adding some wool in to bridge the gap back up to the balloon. And I actually kind of wanted to add some cyan wool at this point, just to kind of add a visual interest as well to match the hull, but a bit also to kind of reinforce the color palette that I'm going for here. And kind of also differentiate them between the balloon. Like it's nice to have that so it doesn't look like, again, a big block of white that you're working with. So once I have this rough shape done, I'm actually just going to go ahead and copy it for the two sides and the top as well. It's because it's not using anything like stairs or slabs, you can go ahead and just copy this on all sides because there isn't any block orientation to have to worry about. And it does also help refine the shape and add color. So with the main balloon done, what I wanted to start working on next was adding some more fantastical elements to this ship to kind of make some more interesting parts of it. So what I'm doing is I'm adding some glowstone crystals to the side to look almost like levitation crystals or something. I'm not sure. But glowstone sticks to the ceiling of the nether, so I figured it has to have some sort of floating properties. So I've gone ahead and I've made just a simple ring of dark oak here, and I've added some end rods to act as almost support kind of beams holding them in. I'm just making a rough crystal shape that goes up from there, and then I'm going to hop down and then scaffold over because survival makes things difficult, and then add the bottom of the crystal as well. So I'm going to be actually copying these two on each side, matching up with the kind of side bulky posts, if that makes sense, not the center one, because I've added kind of a circular pattern there that's going to have a flag design to again add the country logo. The final step I'm adding is I'm actually going to add some almost fins to the back of the ship. Because in a normal ship, you would have like a rudder or something that would be controlled by steering, but since this is an airship, there isn't really the idea of a rudder. So again, I'm copying those kind of Zeppelin fins that I added to the balloon, but I'm adding them in a double layer kind of effect onto the side of the ship. And these would be used for steering, I would assume. I'm not sure exactly how much these would affect, but they look pretty good on the ship and add some more interest. So we're just going to go ahead and say that they do. So again, it's the 2-block slope, and then I'm going to stare out from the side and then add another 2-block slope to the side there where the first fin ends. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and copy that slope again a third time at the very bottom of that second fin to create kind of a 3-block diagonal that works out of the side of the ship here. And then this will be all tidied up with stairs on the side there, just to add a smooth kind of connection point to the ship. Okay, and I'm back. So I've mostly finished the main body of the ship here, and I've added a couple tweaks and details I'll be going over quickly. But unfortunately, I think that's going to be mostly it for the episode today, because this project was significantly larger than anticipated. So for these side kind of sections of the ship with the crystals, I've actually swapped out the dark oak for blackstone and polished basalt. I just wanted to add a bit more visual difference to the dark oak and create kind of break up the color palette of the ship. Speaking of breaking up the color palette, I've also added a stripe of cyan wool in here, and I've added a little design in this main circle that I talked about before. And then, as I was talking about in the time lapse as well, is I've added these grindstones and chains to tether the sides of the balloon to the ship, and it creates some more visual interest and also more realism here. The other things I've done for the ship also is kind of a bit of mob proofing. I had significant issues here on the ship with getting bombed by creepers and skeletons and spiders and whatnot the whole time. So I've gone and trimmed all of the ribbing for the ship in dark oak fences. And I've also added a whole bunch of carpet, which is fortunately not spawnable, and trapdoors to the top of the balloon. So they're not actually as noticeable from the ground level. So if I go up here, yeah, so these are all carpet layers here on top of the wool balloon. And you don't even notice them at all, but it makes this entire area spawn-proof. Fortunately, the crystals generate light, so you don't have to worry about that. And then for the horizontal ribs here, I've added the trapdoors on top, just to, again, make them spawn-proof without adding light. And then for the end parts here, I've actually gone ahead and added some sea lantern for light, and also just, I don't know, they kind of look like an interesting part of the ship. And then on the front of the ship here, I've also added one to the center point here. Again, add some visual interest. It's kind of like how airplanes have those flashing lights on their wingtips and whatnot to show the other ships where they are. So if I don't think there's actually going to be a good way to hop down here. So I'll just go back up to the crow's nest. Okay. So if I head up here, For the interior of the ship, I haven't really done anything yet. This is going to pop down here quickly. I've just kind of smoothed out the shape and created, like I said, this 5-block wide spot between these two here. This is going to be refined out probably with stairs and whatnot, and to create a more interesting interior than... Oh, I missed a block there. Don't have spruce on me. Okay, I'll fix that later. But anyway, and then I've kind of added a rough kind of wall here, and this is where the crew quarters are going to be. So we have beds here. We're probably going to add some trapdoor portholes into here. And whoop, can't actually go underneath there. All right. And then we just have a basic stair up, and this leads back onto the deck, and then this was just walled off to create a captain's quarters, which again, I'm probably going to bust out these walls here. So I think this is, yeah, this is right where the back of the ship is here. So I can add a window probably at that height there, and then maybe some more on the sides here. Haven't decided yet. But yeah, so that's going to be all the stuff we're going to be working on in the next episode. We're also going to add the cargo elevators to the ship here, and just a bunch of details just to get this project fully buttoned up and finished. At this point, it's been over 20 hours of footage I've had to do to get this done, and I am completely out of time for this week. So with that, I will leave it here. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video and the derpy kind of time-lapse explaining how to build one of these. If you guys are interested, I'm probably actually going to build a second smaller ship over there that's more survival-friendly. Maybe I'll even do a tutorial on that. I haven't decided yet. But yeah, I hope you guys had a good time watching here, and I will see you guys next time.